She stood there in her white dress, hands trembling, breath uneven, the faint sound of laughter echoing from the church hall just beyond the door. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Unknown number. For a moment she thought it might be a florist, a relative, a forgotten guest. Her wedding was supposed to start in 20 minutes. 20 minutes until she'd walk down that aisle and promise forever to the man she'd loved since she was 19 years old. Her bridesmaids were laughing somewhere behind her, music drifting faintly through the corridor, but Sarah Mitchell barely heard it. Her eyes stayed fixed on that glowing screen, her reflection trembling in its glass surface. The phone rang again, and again, each ring echoing like a countdown. Finally, she answered, and in just 37 seconds, everything she thought she knew about her life, about him, about their future together, shattered like glass hitting concrete. Silence filled the room after the call ended. The kind of silence that feels alive, that makes the air heavy and the walls seem to close in. Her bouquet slipped from her hand, petals scattering across the tiled floor like little pieces of what used to be perfect. Outside, the wedding coordinator's voice could be heard calling for her. "Sarah, they're ready for you." But Sarah wasn't ready anymore. Her heart was pounding so loud she could barely think. Her fingers were still frozen around the phone, the words still echoing in her mind. A stranger's voice saying, "Don't marry him. He's not who you think he is." Her first instinct was disbelief. Her second, denial. But somewhere between those two, a small voice inside her whispered, "What if it's true?" Because that voice on the other end of the line didn't sound like a prank. It sounded like truth, raw, urgent, desperate truth. And when she looked up, she saw her reflection in the mirror again. But this time, it wasn't a bride smiling back. It was a woman caught between love and fear, between fantasy and reality, between the life she planned. And the truth she could no longer ignore. And what happened next would shock everyone in that church, her family, her friends, and maybe even you, watching this right now. This is the story of the wedding that never happened, the call that changed everything, and the secret that destroyed it all. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sarah and Daniel's story began the way most great romances do, with a chance encounter that felt like destiny. They met during their junior year at Boston University in the fall of 2015. She was studying graphic design. He was finishing his MBA. Their first conversation happened in a crowded coffee shop near campus when he accidentally grabbed her latte instead of his Americano. That small mistake turned into a 3-hour conversation about everything from childhood dreams to favorite movies to the strange comfort of rain on autumn evenings. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Friends called them magnets. Their chemistry was undeniable, the kind that made people believe in soulmates. After graduation, they faced the challenge that breaks most young relationships. Daniel got a job opportunity in Chicago. Sarah had an internship offer in New York. For 2 years, they maintained a long-distance relationship that somehow grew stronger despite the miles between them. Weekend visits, late-night video calls, handwritten letters that arrived with coffee stains and doodles in the margins. Everyone who knew them said they were watching a love story for the ages. In 2019, Daniel moved back to Boston. He told Sarah it was for a better job, but really, it was for her. 6 months later, on a snowy evening in December, he proposed on the same bench where they'd had their first real conversation about forever. The ring was simple, elegant, exactly what she would have chosen. She said yes before he even finished the question, and the engagement period was a blur of wedding planning, venue visits, cake tastings, and dreams about their future. Daniel seemed excited, involved, constantly talking about their honeymoon plans and the house they'd buy together. But looking back, Sarah would remember small details that didn't quite fit. Phone calls he'd taken in another room, weekend trips he explained away as work conferences, a strange guardedness whenever she suggested posting couple photos on social media. She'd dismissed these moments as normal stress, the pressure of planning a wedding while managing a demanding career. She trusted him completely. That trust was about to cost her everything. The morning of June 15th, 2024 started like a dream. Sarah woke up in her childhood bedroom surrounded by her bridesmaids, the early summer sunlight streaming through lace curtains. Her mother brought her breakfast in bed, something she hadn't done since Sarah was a little girl. The house buzzed with excitement, family members arriving, the photographer setting up equipment, her little niece practicing walking with the flower basket. Daniel was at a hotel downtown with his groomsmen, probably nursing hangovers and making last-minute adjustments to their ties. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. By 11 in the morning, Sarah was in her wedding dress, a stunning ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves that her grandmother had helped her choose. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair was pinned in soft waves with small white flowers tucked into the curls. She looked at herself in the mirror and felt beautiful, loved, ready. The ceremony was scheduled for 1 o'clock. At 12:40, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer it. The number wasn't saved in her contacts, and she'd specifically told everyone to reach her through her maid of honor if they needed anything. But something made her pick up. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was fate. The voice on the other end was female, shaking, barely holding together. The woman didn't introduce herself. She just said 6 words that stopped Sarah's heart. "You deserve to know before it's too late." Sarah's mouth went dry. Her hand gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "Who is this?" she whispered. "He's not who you think he is," the woman continued, her voice breaking. "Daniel, he's not free to marry you. He's already married. To me." The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, her reflection in the mirror now showing someone completely different. Her face had drained of color. Her carefully applied makeup suddenly felt like a mask. Outside the door, her bridesmaids were laughing about something, completely unaware that Sarah's world had just collapsed. She wanted to believe it was a prank, some cruel joke from someone who envied her happiness. But the pain in that woman's voice felt too real, too raw. Sarah's mind raced through every moment of the past 9 years, searching for clues she might have missed. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone to try calling the number back. It rang once, then went to a disconnected message. Whoever that woman was, she'd delivered her message and disappeared. Sarah couldn't move. She couldn't think. The room felt like it was spinning, the walls closing in. Her maid of honor, Jessica, knocked on the door and peeked in with a bright smile that immediately faded when she saw Sarah's face. "What's wrong? Sarah, what happened?" Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came out. "How do you explain that your wedding might be built on a lie? How do you tell your best friend that the man waiting at the altar might already belong to someone else?" Finally, she managed to whisper what the caller had said. Jessica's face went from confusion to shock to protective anger in seconds. "That's insane," Jessica said firmly. "Someone's trying to sabotage your wedding. It's probably an ex or some jealous person who can't stand seeing you happy." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the voice had been telling the truth. There was something about the desperation, the specificity of the claim. This wasn't a vague accusation. The woman had said he was married, not that he'd cheated, not that he had doubts. Married. Jessica made a quick decision. "Stay here. Don't move. I'm going to find out what's going on." She grabbed her phone and rushed out. Sarah sat on the edge of the antique chair in her wedding dress, feeling like she was suffocating. Downstairs, guests were arriving. She could hear the distant murmur of conversations, the string quartet warming up. In 20 minutes, she was supposed to walk down the aisle. Jessica returned 15 minutes later, her face pale. She was holding Daniel's phone. "I found this in the groomsmen's room," she said quietly. "He left it charging. Sarah, there are messages." Sarah's heart pounded as Jessica showed her the screen. Text messages from a contact saved only as J. The most recent one, sent just 2 hours ago, read, "I told her. She deserves to know what you've been hiding. This ends today." Sarah scrolled up through the conversation, her hands trembling. The messages were intimate, familiar, the kind of shorthand that only people with shared history use. References to our place and remember when and I miss you. And then she found it. A message from 3 weeks ago. I can't keep pretending we don't exist. You promised me forever first. That still means something. Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She looked at Jessica, whose eyes were filled with tears. There's more, Jessica said softly, and showed her another message thread, this one with photos. Pictures of Daniel with a woman Sarah had never seen. They were at a restaurant, at what looked like a courthouse, standing together in front of a lake. In one photo, they were both wearing rings. Sarah couldn't breathe. The evidence was right there in her hands, but her mind refused to accept it. Jessica wanted to march downstairs and confront Daniel immediately, but Sarah stopped her. She needed to see him face to face. She needed to look into his eyes and hear him explain this. She needed to know if the man she loved was capable of this level of deception. Jessica helped her stand, steadied her as they walked down the hallway past Sarah's confused mother, who asked if everything was okay. Sarah just nodded, unable to speak. They found Daniel in a small room off the main hallway, straightening his tie in a mirror. When he saw Sarah in her wedding dress, his face lit up with a smile that used to make her feel safe. Now it just looked like another lie. Hey, you're not supposed to see me before the ceremony, he said with a nervous laugh. Bad luck, remember? Sarah held up his phone. His smile vanished instantly. The color drained from his face. That was the moment she knew. Even before he said a word, his expression told her everything. Who is she, Daniel? Sarah's voice was surprisingly steady. Who is the woman in these photos? Daniel's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Jessica, then back at Sarah. Sarah, I can explain. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Sarah's voice cracked. Because it looks like you're married to someone else. It looks like you've been lying to me for years. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, panic spreading across his features. It was before us. I mean, it was complicated. We got married young. It was a mistake. And I was going to get it annulled. But then I met you. And everything moved so fast. And I didn't know how to tell you. You had 9 years to tell me, Sarah said, tears now streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. 9 years, Daniel. You proposed to me. We planned a wedding. We invited 200 people. And you never once thought to mention that you were already married? It didn't mean anything, Daniel said desperately. She and we haven't been together in years. It was just paperwork. I was going to handle it after the wedding. I swear, Sarah, you're the only one I love. Does she know that? Sarah asked. Does your wife know that your marriage to her doesn't mean anything? Daniel's silence was deafening. Outside the room, someone called out that they needed to start seating guests. Time was running out. Sarah looked at this man she thought she knew, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Not because he'd changed, but because she'd never truly seen him at all. Sarah stood there in her wedding dress, makeup smeared by tears, holding the phone that contained evidence of her fiancé's betrayal, and faced an impossible decision. She could walk away right now, disappear into a back room, send someone to make an announcement that the wedding was canceled. 200 people would gossip, her family would be mortified, and she'd spend years answering questions about what happened. Or she could pretend she didn't know. She could marry him anyway, deal with this privately later, save face in front of everyone who'd traveled to celebrate their love. Part of her wanted to believe his explanations, to accept that this was just complicated paperwork he'd been too afraid to address. But deep down, she knew the truth. This wasn't about paperwork. This was about a man who'd built an entire relationship on a foundation of lies. A man who'd looked her in the eyes every single day and hidden a massive part of his life. A man who was willing to commit bigamy rather than face the consequences of his choices. Jessica touched her arm gently. Whatever you decide, I'm here. But Sarah, you deserve so much better than this. Sarah wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and made her decision. She walked past Daniel without another word, leaving him standing there with his mouth open. She made her way to the main entrance of the chapel where her father was waiting to walk her down the aisle. He took one look at her face and knew something was terribly wrong. "Sweetheart, what happened?" Sarah squeezed his hand. "Dad, I need you to trust me right now." The organ music began. The doors opened. 200 faces turned to look at her. Sarah took a deep breath and began walking down the aisle, but not toward Daniel. She walked straight to the center, stopped in front of everyone, and in a clear, steady voice that surprised even herself, she spoke. "Thank you all for being here today. I know you came to witness a wedding, and I'm sorry you won't see that. 20 minutes ago, I learned that the man I was about to marry is already married to someone else. I'm not going to stand here and pretend everything is fine. I'm not going to marry someone who's been lying to me for years. I deserve better than that. We all deserve truth." The chapel erupted in gasps, murmurs, shocked whispers. Daniel stood frozen at the altar, his face red with humiliation and anger. Sarah's mother rushed toward her, but before anyone could say anything else, the chapel doors opened one more time. A woman walked in, her face streaked with tears, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She looked at Sarah with an expression of gratitude and pain. "I'm so sorry," the woman said quietly. "I didn't want to ruin your day, but I couldn't let him do this to you, too." This was her, the wife, the woman whose voice had shattered Sarah's world just an hour ago. The woman's name was Jennifer. She and Daniel had gotten married in a small courthouse ceremony in 2018, back when he was supposedly living in Chicago for work. For years, he'd maintained 2 separate lives, 2 separate relationships, carefully compartmentalizing his time and his lies. Jennifer had discovered Sarah's existence only weeks earlier when she'd found wedding invitations in Daniel's car. She'd confronted him, and he'd promised to call off the wedding, to finally come clean. But he hadn't. So Jennifer made the hardest call of her life. She didn't want to hurt Sarah, she said through tears as they stood in that chapel with hundreds of stunned witnesses. She just wanted to stop Daniel from destroying another woman's life the way he'd destroyed hers. In the weeks that followed, Sarah would learn the full extent of Daniel's deception. The business trips that were really visits to Jennifer, the separate social media accounts he'd maintained, the intricate web of lies he'd spun to keep both worlds from colliding. Jennifer filed for divorce and pressed charges for fraud related to joint accounts he'd drained. Daniel's family, equally shocked and devastated by his actions, reached out to apologize to Sarah. But the most unexpected thing happened 3 months later. Sarah received a message from Jennifer. Not an apology or an explanation, but a simple thank you. "You're stronger than I ever was," Jennifer wrote. "Thank you for breaking the cycle. Thank you for choosing truth over shame. Because of you, I finally found the courage to walk away too." Sarah never responded, but she saved that message. Because in her darkest moments, when she questioned whether she'd made the right choice, when she wondered if she should have just stayed quiet and dealt with everything privately, that message reminded her of something crucial. Truth might be painful, but it's the only foundation on which real love can be built. What would you have done in Sarah's place? Would you have walked down that aisle and married him anyway? Would you have confronted him privately and tried to work it out? Or would you have done exactly what she did, choosing truth and dignity over appearances? Comment below and let us know. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about trust and truth and what we're willing to accept in the name of love, hit that like button and share this video, because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that they deserve better, that truth matters more than a perfect wedding, that walking away from lies is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Thanks for watching.